There comes a moment in every cover-up where the lies crumble under the weight of their own deception. And for Blake Lively, that moment has finally arrived. For months, no years, we've watched as she portrayed herself as the innocent bystander. In the storm, the Hollywood darling with the perfect smile and polished words. But behind that curated image, a much darker truth has been lurking. Today, I'm done staying silent. Because now the truth isn't just speculation, it's documented. What you're about to hear has never been released to the public before. These receipts, emails, and confidential texts were hidden, buried, and in some cases outright denied. Blake Lively has gone on press tours, hired elite PR firms, and even tried to silence creators, myself included, who dared to question her version of events. But as of today, those days are over, because now I'm holding the proof in my hands. And it's time the world saw it. This isn't just about celebrity gossip. This isn't another tabloid scandal to laugh off and scroll past. This is about accountability. This is about a powerful figure using influence, media leverage, and legal intimidation to manipulate narratives, discredit others, and hide inconvenient truths. For so long, people were afraid to speak out. I was afraid, but not anymore. This script is going to lay it all out chronologically, factually, and unfiltered. The Blake Lively you think you know is a carefully engineered illusion. And while some might say, why now, why speak up at this moment, the answer is simple. Because the evidence can no longer be ignored, because victims deserve the truth, because those who were targeted, silenced, or shamed deserve vindication, and because I owe it to every one of you who's watched this drama unfold from afar and wondered, is there more to the story? There is. There always was. So buckle in, because what you're about to witness will change the way you see Blake Lively and Hollywood's power machine forever. Before the headlines, before the lawsuits, before the whispers grew too loud to ignore, there was only the illusion. Blake Lively, the glowing face of Hollywood elegance, carried an image so meticulously crafted that even skeptics couldn't help but admire it. With her illicit marriage to Ryan Reynolds, her philanthropic smiles at galas, and her charm on red carpets, she was the industry's perfect creation. But like every perfect facade, there were cracks forming beneath the surface. For years, Blake was the media's darling. Fashion houses clamored to dress her. Directors praised her artistic depth even when her performances failed to land with audiences. Entertainment journalists published glowing profiles crafted with a subtle air of PR scripts, while avoiding tougher questions. She wasn't just famous, she was protected, untouchable. No controversy, no scandal, no career blemish ever seemed to stick. And it wasn't because there were no skeletons in her closet. It was because the Hollywood machine didn't want to look for them. That's how influence works. That's how fame shields the privileged few. But even back then, long before the lawsuits, the subpoenas, and the unraveling of her public image, there were murmurs, small, easily dismissed things. A former assistant suddenly quitting without explanation, a PR intern fired after crossing a line, collaborators who once spoke warmly of her suddenly dodging her name. These weren't loud alarms, just faint sirens in the distance. One of the first to quietly distance himself was an indie director who had once championed Blake as a rising star of serious cinema. After working with her on a smaller project, he abruptly walked away from promoting the film. He refused interviews, citing scheduling conflicts. But behind closed doors, he confided to a friend that something had happened during the shoot, something involving Blake's legal team and a non-disclosure agreement he later regretted signing. Still, the public didn't see any of this because Blake's brand was airtight. And when you're surrounded by a team of fixers, lawyers, and PR strategists trained to kill stories before they breathe, the public remains none the wiser. They see the Vogue covers, the filtered Instagram reels, the playful interviews on talk shows. They don't see the emails, the behind-the-scenes panic, the threats to journalists who asked the wrong questions, and the people who did see it, they stayed quiet. Until now, looking back, it's impossible to ignore the irony. So much of Blake's public identity was built around being real. She wasn't just a movie star, she was the cool mom, the witty wife, the relatable fashion icon who baked pies and made her own holiday decorations. But that's the trap. Because when someone controls their image that carefully, it becomes nearly impossible to separate the actor from the act. This part of the story matters because it explains why the truth took so long to surface. Why so many people, media insiders, actors, creators, were hesitant to speak out. Because to question Blake Lively wasn't just to question a person, it was to question the system that made her untouchable. That fear kept the truth buried for years. But now the curtain is being pulled back, and the Blake Lively we were all sold isn't the one hiding behind the scenes. Every Hollywood empire is built on silence, the kind that's bought, threatened, or worn down through fear. And when it came to Blake Lively, the silence was thunderous. In the early days of her transformation from teen drama starlet to fashion-forward A-lister, there were already subtle shifts in how people around her behaved. Publicists refused to schedule joint interviews, co-stars kept their distance at premieres. Hair and makeup teams were replaced between projects without notice. Something was off, but no one dared say what. It started with whispers, quiet warnings, passed around by people who had worked with her on set or in close quarters. Watch yourself. Don't get too comfortable, she's not who she pretends to be. These weren't angry rants or revenge-fueled gossip, they were hushed matter-of-fact statements, made by people who had seen the machinery up close. One former assistant whose NDA expired recently and who now speaks anonymously described her experience with Blake as psychological warfare. According to her, Blake maintained a pristine, bubbly public persona, while creating a toxic, paranoid environment behind the scenes. It was like walking on glass. 1 minute she's offering to buy your mom a gift, the next minute she's having you written up for breathing wrong. Around her stylist, another crew member from a major studio project, claimed that Blake manipulated production delays by leveraging her celebrity status to dodge responsibilities, only to turn around and place the blame on younger actresses trying to keep the schedule on track. She'd show up late, make everyone wait, then spread rumors that others were being unprofessional. Everyone was too afraid to call her out. But the most disturbing pattern was her alleged use of legal threats to silence any dissent. These weren't just standard, they were weaponized. Staffers were asked to sign overly aggressive confidentiality clauses with clauses threatening six-figure penalties. And the moment someone showed discomfort or hinted at dissatisfaction, Blake's legal team would swoop in with subtle intimidation, phone calls, cease and desists, and in some cases untraceable blacklisting. Then came the incident that many now believe was the beginning of the unraveling. A journalist from a respected entertainment outlet had secured an in-depth interview with Blake for an upcoming cover story. During the conversation, the journalist casually brought up rumors of backstage tension on a recent film, not an accusation, just a question. Blake's mood reportedly shifted in an instant. What followed was a calculated smear campaign that destroyed the journalist's reputation. Both in the industry and online, articles were pulled, PR firms were looped in, collaborators turned cold overnight. The journalist never worked in entertainment again, but still no one outside the industry knew. Blake Lively's public image remained flawless. She was still the face of skincare lines, still the witty, self-deprecating mom on Instagram, still America's sweetheart posing next to her husband at galas, playing up the perfect couple narrative, even as rumors circulated that he was growing increasingly uncomfortable with her behind the scenes. Then something strange happened. Creators on the internet started putting the puzzle pieces together. Clips, interviews, patterns in public behavior, legal filings, deleted posts. People began noticing the uncanny consistency in how Blake's critics suddenly disappeared. Creators who questioned her publicly were hit with copyright strikes. Others were served with legal threats. One popular podcaster claimed she received a call from someone close to Blake's team, warning her to delete an upcoming episode or face consequences. And then there was the DM. A whistleblower, allegedly a former publicist, sent a message to a mid-sized content creator with evidence, real evidence, screenshots, email chains, even internal documents from a PR agency that listed tactics to discredit specific creators. That creator, too afraid to go public, sent the material to another creator they trusted. And that's how it reached me. When I first saw the documents, I was stunned. Not because I didn't expect it, but because it confirmed everything I had feared. This wasn't just petty celebrity manipulation. This was orchestrated silencing, strategic reputation laundering, weaponized legality. One of the most chilling pieces, a private email allegedly sent by Blake's legal team discussing how to frame a narrative against a former co-star she had clashed with. The email didn't just lay out facts. It suggested fabricating a storyline that would appear organically in gossip blogs, while using burner accounts to anonymously leak it. This was no longer a theory. This was a playbook, and yet the mainstream media said nothing. Why? Because they weren't on it. PR firms would offer them exclusive interviews in exchange for favorable angles. Reporters who complied were rewarded with invites, access, career advancement. The few who didn't were shut out. In the shadows, the truth was festering. But the public never saw it because the machine was working overtime to make sure they never would. Until now, this is the part Blake Lively never wanted the world to see. The part buried under non-disclosure agreements, silenced through lawsuits, and scrubbed by elite PR firms with bottomless budgets. For years she maintained control of her image like a general leading a war campaign. Every word, every post, every interview calculated. But what happens when the mask slips? What happens when the truth, long buried under threats and manipulation, finally sees the light? The evidence I'm about to show you didn't come from tabloids or fan speculation. It came from people on the inside. From publicists, assistants, content creators, even former legal consultants, people who were either discarded by the machine or fed up with protecting a lie. It includes internal communications, legal memos, and most shockingly, screenshots of Blake herself engaging in what can only be described as calculated deceit. Let's begin with the emails. One thread dated 2 years ago shows Blake's team coordinating with a gossip outlet to kill a story involving a co-star who allegedly had an altercation with her on set. The email sent by a PR executive to an editor read, "We need this buried before Thursday. We're offering you exclusive access to Blake's next shoot behind the scenes full spread photo rights. If you agree to kill the piece, we'll also provide alternative copy on co-star's name to redirect narrative if needed." The email was marked confidential and CC'd to multiple parties, including what appears to be Blake's personal representative. There's no ambiguity in the language. This was a bribe, a strategic move to rewrite the narrative, using media leverage, and it worked. That story never ran. But the co-star, who had once been a rising name in the indie film circuit, quietly vanished from public life, and Blake, she went on to accept a humanitarian award days later. Then there were the private messages. One DM, allegedly from Blake herself, was recovered from a phone belonging to a former assistant. The message was directed to someone working in production on a streaming project. "Make sure actress doesn't get too comfortable. She thinks she's a lead, she's a supporting role, nothing more. Don't let her forget that." This wasn't a message about professionalism, this was personal. This was Blake asserting control, ego dominance, backstage manipulation aimed at undermining another woman's confidence and career. Another screenshot captured a Slack conversation inside a PR agency hired by Blake's team. One line in the thread stands out: "Let's coordinate with burner accounts to spread screenshots and make it look organic." The context: a plan to discredit a popular content creator who had posted a video critiquing Blake's recent lawsuit threats. They knew the power of perception. If they could make it look like fans were defending Blake while exposing the creator, they wouldn't have to get their hands dirty directly. But perhaps the most explosive document is a legal memo drafted by a firm that previously worked with Blake, outlining digital containment protocols. This wasn't about real legal threats, it was about perception management. The document outlined how to identify and monitor creators speaking critically, flag videos for copyright even if use falls under fair use, send intent to sue letters to scare smaller creators, flood social media with supportive messaging through paid bots and influencers, offer selective exclusives to entertainment outlets in exchange for positive redirection. This wasn't a defense plan, it was an offensive strategy executed with surgical precision. And the receipts don't stop there. There's footage never released publicly of Blake walking off a set mid-shoot demanding that a producer be fired because he refused to take her suggestion seriously. The crew confirmed later that the suggestion was unrelated to the scene and was considered disruptive. That producer quietly blacklisted from future projects involving her agency. There's also the now infamous text message chain between Blake and a powerful publicist discussing how to frame a legal dispute with Justin Baldoni in the press. One message reads, "Let's lean into overwhelmed mom, it'll get sympathy. Push emotional toll angle, if we get NYT on board it'll stick." That very angle showed up verbatim in an exclusive with a major outlet the following week. Coincidence? Unlikely. What this shows irrefutably is that Blake Lively didn't just lie through omission. She participated in a coordinated multi-level cover-up of her actions while proactively harming others. She leveraged her fame not only to protect her reputation but to punish those who challenged it. The facade was never accidental, it was a weapon. Now let me be clear, this isn't about cancel culture, this isn't about tearing down a woman in Hollywood for making mistakes, this is about power abuse. This is about someone who knew their influence and chose to use it for personal gain, at the expense of others' livelihoods, mental health, and reputations. And when confronted, instead of taking responsibility, she used her lawyers to bury the truth. That ends now. If the evidence proved Blake Lively lied, then the real scandal is how many people helped her get away with it the moment her carefully crafted empire began to unravel. So too did the illusion that mainstream media was objective. Behind the magazine covers and polished interviews was a tangled web of silence, protection, and favor trading that kept the truth out of reach. For years, journalists were warned, not officially but through quiet career-defining nudges, that Blake was off-limits. Reporters who asked the wrong questions were denied future access. Entertainment sites that ran stories that contradicted her narrative would find themselves blacklisted by major studios and denied red carpet credentials. One editor even confided that running a negative piece on Blake was like committing professional suicide. This wasn't paranoia, this was protocol. Let's talk about what happened to creators, journalists, and insiders who tried to speak up. When the first wave of criticism against Blake began bubbling in niche YouTube commentary channels and independent blogs, her team didn't respond with statements or transparency. They responded with force, copyright strikes, threatening legal emails, shadow bans, private warnings to creators through mutual industry contacts. Some creators lost entire channels after daring to question her actions, and then there was the Influencer Suppression Network. Multiple digital strategists, anonymous but verified, shared that they were hired to monitor and flag social media activity critical of Blake. Their job was simple: erase the noise, use bot accounts to report content, spam negative commenters with replies that disrupted conversation, and amplify curated positive comments using burner accounts and paid engagement. This wasn't a conspiracy, this was coordinated brand control. A TikTok creator who posted a viral breakdown of the lawsuit Blake filed against Justin Baldoni suddenly found herself locked out of her account. Instagram creators who referenced leaked texts noticed their reach cut in half overnight. A podcaster with receipts from a production source mysteriously lost her sponsorships after teasing a Blake episode. Emails show she was flagged by a brand manager connected to Blake's PR team. It wasn't just digital containment, it was a purge. Meanwhile, mainstream media outlets parroted her side of the story. Like gospel, articles titled Blake Lively's brave battle in court, and inside her emotional struggle dominated the headlines. Never mind that the actual court filings painted a very different picture. These outlets never quoted Justin Baldoni's legal team directly, they never questioned why Blake filed multiple legal motions to suppress deposition footage. They never analyzed the timeline of her public statements against the damning evidence that was quietly building in the background, because they weren't reporting the news. They were managing the narrative. The most egregious example came when a prominent outlet ran a story dismissing the evidence of coordinated legal threats against creators. They didn't investigate the emails, they didn't contact the creators mentioned. Instead, they cited a source close to Blake and concluded that online attacks were fueled by misogyny and jealousy. That quote word for word matched language found in a leaked PR strategy doc. Not an accident, a plant. This is how reputation laundering works in Hollywood. PR firms offer access in exchange for loyalty. Publicists feed exclusive tips to gossip blogs who publish them without fact-checking. And anyone who threatens the narrative gets buried. This system didn't just protect Blake, it enabled her. It let her weaponize her public image to frame herself as a victim even while she was actively harming others behind the scenes. And through it all, not a single list outlet dared to question the timeline, the contradictions, or the credibility of her claims. They simply parroted her talking points and waited for the storm to pass. But the storm isn't passing. Because content creators, independent voices, podcasters, whistleblowers refuse to stay silent. We're not in the pocket of studios, we don't owe our livelihoods to brand managers. And we won't be bullied into silence. Creators began compiling receipts, side-by-side breakdowns of her statements versus the leaked emails, timelines of her media appearances cross-referenced with the suppression of deposition evidence. Social media erupted not just in support of the victims, but in outrage over the gaslighting campaign disguised as journalism. Even fans started waking up. Comment sections began filling with people asking why Blake was dodging real questions, why she hadn't addressed the whistleblower emails, why her legal team was targeting creators instead of addressing the truth. Something's off, people began to say, this doesn't add up. And suddenly the comments weren't as easy to scrub, the tide was turning. By the time the mainstream media tried to pivot, it was too late. People had seen the manipulation for what it was. They had the screenshots, the DMs, the leaked internal memos. And Blake Lively's halo had cracked wide open. But this isn't just about one celebrity. It's about a system that protects fame at all costs, that buries victims to protect headlines, that silences truth tellers to preserve illusions. When the cracks in Blake Lively's public image began to spread, Hollywood's silence grew louder and more telling. While fans and creators were raising questions, the industry's elite were busy scrambling. Because this wasn't just about one actress being exposed. It was about what her exposure meant for them, their alliances, their projects, their reputations. Behind closed doors, people started choosing sides. Some, especially those who had worked with Blake closely, doubled down in support, whether out of genuine loyalty, contractual obligation, or fear of public backlash. They issued carefully worded statements that said everything and nothing at the same time. Blake is one of the kindest professionals I've ever worked with. I stand by my friend. Don't believe everything you read online. These weren't spontaneous defenses. They were damage control. In fact, one insider leaked a PR brief that had allegedly been sent to a handful of Blake's Hollywood contacts. The memo outlined approved talking points for those willing to comment in support of Ms. Lively, including focus on her charitable work, remind the public of her role as a mother and wife, avoid mentioning specific allegations, keep tone warm and vague, frame criticism as part of a larger online harassment issue. This strategy didn't just aim to protect Blake, it aimed to shame anyone who questioned her. If you asked too many questions, you were part of the problem. If you brought up evidence, you were targeting women. Never mind that the most vocal whistleblowers were women. Never mind that the victims of her intimidation campaigns were often other women. But not everyone fell in line. Justin Baldoni, who had already filed court motions exposing Blake's behind-the-scenes behavior, refused to play nice, and quietly others followed suit. A former producer who had once sung her praises released a carefully phrased interview where he declined to comment on her professionalism. A co-star from a canceled streaming show leaked a thread exposing Blake's manipulation tactics. Then came the bombshell. A veteran actor who had worked with Blake early in her career leaked footage of Blake berating a script supervisor on set, slamming a binder to the floor over what she called stupid direction. That clip, grainy and brief, went viral in under an hour. It wasn't just the meltdown. It was the look in her eyes, cold, condescending, calculating. For many, it confirmed what they had started to suspect: the kindness was an act. The charm was a performance. The smile was a brand strategy, and the woman behind it all wasn't what she seemed. As more evidence surfaced, Hollywood insiders started distancing themselves. Quietly, subtly, but unmistakably, Blake's name disappeared from certain projects. Brand partnerships were reevaluated, PR firms stopped taking inquiries about her, and at one high-profile charity event, she was visibly excluded from a group photo that included nearly every A-list attendee. Even Ryan Reynolds, once inseparable from Blake's public persona, was spotted solo at multiple events. Sources close to his team claimed he was furious about how her legal strategy was unfolding, especially the targeting of online creators. He refused to comment publicly, but his silence said more than any statement could. The divide in Hollywood was sharp and undeniable. On one side were the gatekeepers, agents, studios, and celebrities, who had too much invested in the system to speak out. On the other side were the truth-tellers, creators, journalists, actors, and former insiders, who had nothing left to lose and everything to expose. And at the center of it all stood Blake Lively, a once unbreakable figure now scrambling to hold the pieces of her empire together. But it was too late. The machine that had protected her for so long was breaking down. And with every new revelation, every email leak, every whistleblower statement, the cost of loyalty was rising. It was no longer just about protecting an actress, it was about being complicit in something much darker. For some, the risk was no longer worth it. A casting director anonymously confessed that she removed Blake from a shortlist after the evidence surfaced. "We can't afford that kind of backlash," she said. "She's not worth the drama anymore." Another writer admitted she rewrote a lead role that had been loosely based on Blake because she didn't want to glamorize someone who used power to hurt people. That's the power of exposure. It doesn't just change reputations, it changes opportunities. But even as Hollywood scrambled, one thing became increasingly clear: Blake Lively wasn't going down without a fight. Her team continued sending out legal warnings. A new PR firm was hired. Private investigators were rumored to be looking into whistleblowers. And she made a rare public appearance, hoping to prove that nothing had changed. But everything had changed. So here we are, after months of questions, years of rumors, and a Hollywood machine built on silence and spin. The truth has finally clawed its way to the surface. Blake Lively lied. She weaponized her image, abused her influence, and then tried to destroy anyone who dared to tell the truth. And for a long time she got away with it. But not anymore. What this entire saga proves is that even the most beautiful masks eventually crack. The truth, no matter how deeply it's buried beneath lawsuits, threats, and PR puff pieces, doesn't disappear. It waits, it builds, and eventually it explodes. Blake's empire was never built on honesty, it was built on perception. She didn't rise to power by being the most talented or most genuine, she rose by being the most controlled. Every smile, every post, every headline was part of a strategy to sell the world an image. And when that image was threatened, she didn't course correct, she retaliated. She could have taken accountability, she could have admitted the truth, she could have sat down and faced the people she hurt. Instead, she chose to gaslight, to bully, to destroy. She chose scorched earth tactics over humility. She chose control over decency. And in doing so, she proved exactly what her critics had been saying all along. that the real Blake Lively is not the one you see on red carpets or Instagram reels. The real Blake is the one who hides behind cease and desist letters, who plants stories and gossip blogs, who calls herself a victim while destroying others' careers in the dark. But here's the thing about control: it doesn't last forever. You can buy silence. You can intimidate creators. You can manipulate headlines. But you cannot stop the internet. You cannot stop people from talking. And once the truth is out there, you can't unring the bell. This moment, this story is bigger than just Blake. It's a reckoning for the entire system that allowed her behavior to thrive. The agents who looked the other way. The producers who buried complaints. The PR firms who profited off lies. The journalists who chose access over integrity. Every one of them helped write the script. And now that script is being rewritten. This new chapter belongs to the creators who refused to be silenced. To the whistleblowers who risked everything to come forward. To the victims who lived in fear for years only to finally see their truths validated. It belongs to every person who said enough. This story is about the end of unchecked celebrity power. It's about accountability in an industry that has too long protected its elite at the expense of everyone else. And most importantly, it's about reminding the world that no amount of fame justifies abuse. No amount of glamour excuses manipulation. Blake Lively tried to erase the truth. She failed. From now on, every headline, every public appearance, every brand endorsement she lands will come with an asterisk. Because people won't forget. They'll remember the leaked texts. They'll remember the whistleblowers. They'll remember the creators who stood their ground and refused to bow to power. And if she tries to stage a comeback, if the industry once again tries to pretend this never happened, we will be watching. We will be here with the receipts, with the truth, ready to remind them that accountability isn't a phase. It's a promise. So let this be a warning, not just to Blake Lively, but to every powerful figure hiding behind a polished image. The truth will find you. And when it does, no PR campaign, no legal team, no corporate media alliance will save you from it. We've seen the truth now, and we're not going back, not ever.